How did the current widespread interest in Satanism evolve? Why are so many teenagers interested in the occult and Satanism? What importance do the many symbols have in relation to witchcraft and Satanism? Currently, a number of mass murders have been brought to the attention of law enforcement. The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, and the mass murder victims found near San Francisco area, where Charles Ng was arrested. Newspaper accounts relate both incidents to have been flavored with satanic rituals or symbolisms. How did witchcraft evolve? Apparently, early man is said to have sought answers and explanations to the things he could not physically control, such as the seasons, life, health, death, and food. Since he could not control them, he tried to manipulate them ritually. As a result, these men discovered uncontrollable forces, whereby myths were developed in an attempt to explain them, which lead to the rudiments of science, astronomy, chemistry, and medicine. As man adapted and controlled his environment, he became less dependent upon nature. A much less complicated answer as to the evolution of witchcraft can be found in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Eve disobeyed God, ate the forbidden fruit, and gave it to Adam to eat also. Both Adam and Eve were then banned from the Garden of Eden and doomed to die a physical death. From that time onward, history has shown the many attempts of persons to gain eternal life through the sacrifice of babies, animals, food, etc. Persons might also consult mediums, sorcerers, and wizards in order to gain knowledge, wealth, power, etc. The Old and New Testaments of the Christian Bible have many accounts of witchcraft, sorcery, divination, and sacrifices. Continuing through history, we find in the 13th century a Frisian clan named the Stedingers, who were notorious for their satanic ceremonies. The Stedingers plundered churches and desecrated the sacraments and crucifixes. They killed and indulged in all manners of orgies. In 1234, the Duke of Brabant went to war against them and had 8,000 of them killed. The survivors later emigrated to other parts of Europe, taking their occult arts with them, which made the problem even worse than before. The Old and New Testaments of the Christian Bible have many accounts of witchcraft, sorcery, divination, and sacrifices. Continuing through history, we find in the 13th century a Frisian clan named the Stedingers, who were notorious for their satanic ceremonies. The Stedingers plundered churches and desecrated the sacraments and crucifixes. They killed and indulged in all manners of orgies. In 1234, the Duke of Brabant went to war against them and had 8,000 of them killed. The survivors later emigrated to other parts of Europe, taking their occult arts with them, which made the problem even worse than before. In 1118, the Knights Templar was formed to protect Jerusalem for Christian pilgrims by the King of Jerusalem and by the Pope. This order developed into a monastic and then a magical group. Much Gnostic theology was taught by the founder 𝗖𝗆𝗶𝗁𝗆𝗃 and Geoffrey de Saint-Orne. A magical sect called the Johannites taught the Templars the mysteries of true Christianity. A power play occurred 200 years after its founding, and its then current leader, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake. According to the noted author Kurt Koch, the Knights Templar were the founders of the regular Church of Satan. Those who wished to join the order were required to tread underfoot a cross lying on the ground and to spit on it. They also had to sign themselves over to the devil in blood. They celebrated the Black Mass. Everything that is held sacred in the Christian realm was dragged into the dirt by them. On their altar, they had a naked woman. They mixed the communion wine with the blood of a slaughtered child. They altered their prayers, substituting the name of Satan for the name of God. All these are things which we also know the present-day churches of Satan. The rites of Satan worshippers were carried by some of them from Paris, France, to the USA, and then from Rome, Italy, to other lands. Further, in the history of religions, Satan worship often identified with snake cults. This cult allegedly goes back to the original temptation in paradise, where the devil appeared to the first man and woman in the form of a snake. The inhabitants of the land of Canaan worshipped Satan in the form of a snake. The same is found in Egypt. The magicians who withstood Moses belonged to the snake cults. They were able to hypnotize snakes, so they became stiff like sticks. These sorcerers were able to do the opposite miracle to that of Moses. Moses could, by God's power, change his rod into a snake. The sorcerers could, by Satan's powers, turn snakes into rods, and then bring them back out of their hypnotic state. Several centuries BC, the 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗱𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗴𝗃 cult began in Syria. The 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗱𝗃𝗃s were snake and Satan worshippers. They called themselves Gnostics, possessors of a higher wisdom. The 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗱𝗃s believed that after death, man has the chance of developing upward over long periods of time, until he reaches complete salvation. In holding these convictions, they are following the prophecy of Satan when he said to Eve, "You will not die, but your eyes will open." In Nigeria, there is a Cobra cult where its members must sign their souls to the devil. Upon ascribing oneself to the devil, one supposedly acquires certain demonic powers. One particular Cobra cult sorcerer sent a cobra to a man to kill him. A similar incident also occurred in a Liberian snake cult. Human and animal sacrifices, which were practiced by the ancient pagan peoples, are being practiced today by some who worship Satan. The following examples depict such hideous crimes that have occurred. A 17-year-old boy was a member of the Church of Satan. He later left that church to become a Christian. He was subsequently tortured to death by his former friends. The chief instigator of his murder was another 17-year-old boy. When this other boy was arrested, the boy showed the policeman a tattoo of his left hand, which depicted a cross upside down with the words, "His Majesty the Devil." A young couple was asked by an American family to come and babysit. When the parents came home, they found the young couple, who belonged to a satanic cult, had roasted the baby on a gridiron. The horrified parents had entrusted their child to devil worshippers. In England, a group called the Occult had its origin in a pre-Christian fertility cult. In this cult, the sun was regarded as male, the moon as female. The cult's symbols were accordingly a penis for the sun and a vagina for the moon. The signs are bread and salt. In the ceremonies of the Tanakh cult, bread and salt are placed on the body of a woman. The woman lies on a table clad in a red robe. She is only partially dressed. Behind the altar are again the symbols of the male and female principles. The Tanakh cult developed these practices into what is known as the Black Mass. The Black Mass is celebrated all over the world. Needless to say, accompanied by sexual orgies. Many traditions in the Christian religion are performed backwards in the Black Mass, i.e., the Lord's Prayer must be recited backwards. In London, England, is the Horned God cult. Every member has a horned god at home. This horned god has its arms outstretched. Like Jesus on the cross, the feet are fashioned like a snake. In another chapter of the Horned God cult, mention has been made of the goat of Mendes. This goat's head is the symbol of Satan. Although only a brief overview of Satan worship rituals is presented, it should assist the investigator, patrol officer in identifying some of the symbols. Another example of the influence of Satanist groups can be seen in this example. A schoolboy joined a Satanist group at the age of 9. At the age of 13, he skinned a small dog and drank its blood. Later he developed a penchant for eating skin peeled off from the fingers and feet of other people who would let him. The most difficult and most important task of the investigator, patrol officer, is to identify persons who have a propensity for pagan and satanic practices. The following are signs upon which the investigator should take note.